neither we nor the people of Gaza nor the people of Palestine are powerless in this situation. And I think that's what we've proven in the past year. And that, I think, is what we have to focus on. I'm going to come back to talking about the BDS movement later, but I just want to point out that a few months ago, for the first time in history, an arrest warrant was actually issued for an Israeli leader by a judge in London, for Tzipi Livni, one of the architects of what's happening in Gaza, and very proud. She has talked very publicly of how proud she is of her role. She wasn't arrested. She never went to the UK. She had to cancel her trip. She wasn't arrested, and the warrant was eventually withdrawn. And British politicians, in the way they have of rushing to appease Israel, said, we're very, very sorry, what a scandal. I mean, the scandal is that they would welcome a war criminal to their country and not arrest her, but they, were abjectly apologetic that she would have to worry about this. They said, well, don't worry, we'll change the law, we'll make it so you can come here freely. But I think that moment was very significant, and it may have saved lives. Because for the first time, Israeli officials have to seriously take their personal fate into account when they issue murderous criminal orders. It might not be much, but it's an important first step. And we know now that most high Israeli officials and military officers will no longer travel abroad without legal advice, and many of them will not travel at all. And this is an important, very, very important thing. I think it's going to be a lot harder, by the way, for the British government to propose a change in the law after the assassination in Dubai and the exposure of the use of British passports. Now, why would the British public, why would the British Parliament tolerate changing the law for the benefit of one little rogue state, which is content even to put British citizens in danger? But that's another matter. What I want to focus on is a little bit. Nancy was very kind to mention my speech in Hampshire College, but I want to reiterate some of the points I made there, because I think this is the crucial thing to understand about the moment we're in. What Gaza showed us is the awesome power of Israel's destructive ability. Before that, Lebanon reminded us of that. And the history of Palestine, of Lebanon, of the Arab world is punctuated by the names of too many massacres that remind us that Israel has the ability to inflict tremendous suffering, killing, mutilation, and damage with impunity, barely suffering a scratch itself in relative terms. But we're getting to a point where this is not really changing the equation anymore, where, in a sense, the global movement for justice is becoming more powerful than Israeli weapons. And I don't want to be glib about it. I think we have to be very realistic about the continued suffering, the open wounds of people in Gaza, in Lebanon, throughout Palestine, because of the hot metal, the cast lead that Israel fires at them every day. And that suffering is very real. But I think that the change in the equation was really hit upon by a recent report from an influential Israeli think tank called the Reut Institute. And this is a think tank founded by a former Israeli government advisor called Gidi Grinstein, and they're listened to very carefully in Israel. This report that they did was actually presented at a special session of the cabinet. They're funded, incidentally, largely by donors in the United States through a non-profit organization, which I think is actually maybe even based in the Bay Area. I looked it up. And they receive almost $1 million a year from them. You'll see why that is significant. But what they said is that, and I think this is a genuine insight, is that Israel's has traditionally viewed the threat to its existence in military terms, that it might be invaded from Syria or, Iran or who knows where else, Indonesia one day. Once they're done with Iran, maybe Indonesia will be the next threat. And therefore has focused on a military response, that Israel has to be able to defeat its military rivals. But the Reut Institute says this is wrong, that really the main threat to Israel is from what they call two networks, a resistance network and a delegitimization network. The resistance network is made up of the, what they call the asymmetric resistance on the ground, groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. And the aim of this resistance network is to bring about the implosion of Israel from within, similar to East Germany, apartheid South Africa, or the Soviet Union, rather than through a defeat on the battlefield, which is effectively impossible. Israel's too strong. The delegitimization network, which is supposedly in an unholy alliance with the resistance network, is us. It's the broad global movement of peace, justice, and human rights groups, boycott, divestment, and sanctions activists all over the world. Israel Apartheid Week, which begins, this is the first event for what for me is going to be a long week of about 10 days of travel and speaking for Israel Apartheid Week. Israel Apartheid Week is part of the delegitimization network. Church-based, faith-based, and trade union-based activism, and what they call lawfare, using the law to wage war against Israel, or using the law to actually hold Israel accountable. And they even, I was quite flattered by this, quoted my speech, which Nancy referred to in the introduction, Hampshire College, as an example of, I supposedly laid out how the delegitimization strategy works. And here's the significant sentence, or couple of sentences from the Reut Institute. Basically, the combined attack from the resistors and delegitimizers, and I quote, possesses strategic significance and may develop into a comprehensive existential threat within a few years. It says, a harbinger of such a threat would be the collapse of the two-state solution as an agreed framework for resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the coalescence behind a one-state solution as a new alternative framework. Now, I want to look at these two parts separately. One of the things that you may have heard is that this report named a few of the global hubs of delegitimization, and they included London, Toronto, Madrid, and the San Francisco Bay Area.